It is so exciting to have you here today. And, you know, you pick this theme, Jeffrey, of collaborative leadership. So I want to start there. Tell us a little bit about what that means to you.
Well, through my 38-year career in aviation, and I would say probably the past 20 years I've been spent in some type of leadership role. One of the things that I've learned is that when you include stakeholders or the people that work for you in the decisions, they tend to buy into it. A lot of times we think of leadership, and I was a former military person also. A lot of times we think about that as command and control. But one of the things I've learned is you've got to include everybody in your decision. And I find that it's very rare that I have to make a decision that it's just has to be done right now. It's so urgent that I have to do it right now that I don't have time to talk to my management team. I don't have time to talk to other employees or other stakeholders to get input. And I find that when you get that input and you talk to everyone else, your decisions generally people buy into them. And I find that probably 99% of the time, those decisions usually work out. In the times when they don't work out, you go back and you sit down, you talk again with your management team or your employees, and you explain the why. Or in those rare occasions where you really, really don't have time to consult with anybody else and make a decision, again, if you've done that in the past and you go back and you sit down and you explain the why and why you made the decisions, I found this been readily accepted by the employees. And it's the best way I've seen to get buy-in from your employees or from your leadership team.
Totally agree 100%. You know, they always say better together. And what's that other trite saying? I think more heads are better than one, right? Like, so when you're trying to come up with some course of action, to have that kind of input is really critical. So I love your theme today. And what I want to do, Jeffrey, is kind of walk this back to the very beginning, to your roots, because you obviously are a collaborator, and I always find there's a little bit of nature, a little bit of nurture in that. And so I love to talk to people about, where they grew up. Tell me a little bit about your family. So let's start there.
Well, I grew up in rural Alabama, a town called Lincoln, and I grew up on a farm. Believe it or not, I was a farm boy, and joined the military right after high school. So it's kind of how I got my start. I became an Army air traffic controller. So that's how I got my start into aviation. I think certainly growing up in the rural background and certainly the military background certainly shaped me a lot. Especially around working with people, including people. I think that had a huge influence on who I am today.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about, I know where there's another picture rolling here of your early military career, which we're going to get to in a second. But I want to go back to that, just verbally go back to that picture. That was you in high school, leaning against a tree. And for everybody out there, we were talking before the show. I actually have an identical picture of my son, like from 3 years ago, for his high school picture, exact pose, leaning against a tree. So I love that. Jeffrey, growing up in Alabama on a farm, were there any formative kind of people or events in your life that really shaped your view of being a collaborative leader?
Well, I think back to something. I would say my father was probably the most influential person in my life, and he always taught me that you could do anything that you wanted to do if you just had the intestinal fortitude to power through that. That you could get there. But I think probably one of the most important things that he instilled in me that I still talk to my management team about today, and something that I still resonates with me. He always said to me, if success was easy, everybody would be successful. And so it was one of those things that he taught me. If you want to be successful, you got to be willing to work for it. And that's something that has resonated with me through my entire life, is that, I've always been willing to work for what I wanted. And another thing he used to tell me all the time, he says, as a young kid, most of us, there were times when you don't always, and being on a farm, necessarily want to do your work, the things that's required of you. And he used to always tell me, he says, I don't like work either, but it's the results of work that I care about. And that was another thing that's always resonated with me, is that when you want success and you want something to be successful, you have an image or desire of what you want. And I think that also has kind of worked its way into my collaborative nature, is that I have been willing to work for it and knowing that it's going to take hard work to be successful and get there. So those were some of the things that early in my life that kind of resonated with me, and again, that shaped me into the person I am today.
Well, I love that. And also, kind of weaving it back into your theme, as you said, none of us get to be successful without a team and those around us. And by the way, speaking of team, we got a lot of folks out there cheering you on. You've got a cheering squad. Rob Hebert from Workhorse is not only saying roll tide, but thank you for volunteering and serving our nation. Clifford Kistner is saying hello, folks. And of course, Mike Peel is saying excited to hear from Jeffrey. So you've got fans out there already cheering you on, which is so awesome. Is there, you just weaved in a couple really cool things there, Jeffrey. Looking back, is there like one saying that you recall that resonated with you when you were growing up, that stuck with you throughout your life? I know I have one, but do you have one, like a saying that either, your dad or a teacher or somebody said? I mean, you just kind of had two, if you will, philosophies, but any in particular?
Well, there's three that I live by.
All
But
right.
but there's one, I would say, the most important, that did start with my father. Again, you can probably see why I said my father was probably the most influential person in my life. And he used to always tell me, never forget where you came from, or never forget where you started. And that's something that even in any management meeting today, I still talk to my team about that all the time, because we all started somewhere. And my dad's purpose, I think, for telling me that was that, when you started, you probably fell down. You probably were not perfect. You made some mistakes and some stumbles along the way. And in order for you to be sitting there, somebody, probably gave you a second chance, probably allowed you to get up and dust yourself off, or allowed you to make those mistakes. And when I talk about, again, the collaborative leadership, I think probably one of the most important things that we can do as leaders is make sure that people know that there's room to make mistakes. They're not perfect. They're going to make mistakes. And so when you remember what it was like the day that you started, the first day that you sit in the chair, the first day that you assume your leadership position, don't ever forget that. And when you have the junior executive or whatever sitting across the table from you, remember what it was like for you 10 years ago, 15 years ago. They're going through the exact same thing.